And I just want to say, shout out if you have any interest in these videos or even just respect for what I'm attempting with these videos. More so than the content is the respect is deeper than the content, I think, and that's for anything. Is that I don't mean to be taking honors, uh, title, esteem, and authority to myself with these different statements. I have looked into different things, and I've more so cited the majority of what I've looked into, where I'm drawing some of these inferences, and also experiences in my life where I'm drawing inferences, and that's all I claim to be doing with this is just connecting, drawing inferences and associating different concepts and inspirations that I've been blessed with. And I don't think we can do anything better or worse in life than to associate. We can, maybe our best, our worst experiences are a function of how we have associated, and our best understandings and undertakings and accomplishments are also a function of associating somehow. Did you do something cool? You may have been associated with someone or something that had been facilitated by another association before that, that allowed you the facility to do that. The author Arthur Avalon says that nothing may come into existence by intention outside of thought, will, and action. Knowledge, action, and will. So you need knowledge, you need will, and you need action to amount to something. And a lot of those are either tended by or exist within some form of associating. And so associating is very profound. Even the thoughts that we do, I think that our thoughts are not so much our own, but they are of our own choosing, and when what we choose to associate in our mind. And when we associate things that had seemed different or had maybe been understood by ourselves and others to be different, and we can see the unity and the difference. When we can equally respect the unity and the difference, the unity and the diversity of reality equally, and both together collectively and respectively, we have the deepest of insight, we have the deepest of beauty, we have the deepest of love. And that's all I'm attempting to do with these videos. And it is our prerogative to choose what we think, do, and say, and therefore it is our ability to choose what we associate together in our mind, in our heart, in our life, in our thought, in our speech. And we are to, maybe you can say that we may live and die by what we associate, first in our mind, in our heart, and then in our speech, in our action, and then in our circumstance, and then in our consequence, and then in our reality, and then in our lineage, and our heritage, and lack thereof, and what we pass on of ourselves and enjoy of others for better and worse. All that can be a function of associating, and it's yet our prerogative to choose to do that. And so that's why it's so egregious, like in some of these videos when people write people off as insane, because they're saying that howsoever you associated something, you are wrong for that, and you are in error for that, and you are false for that, and you are deluded for that, and you are insane for that, and you are bogus for that, and you are not of worth for that, nor are you of consequence for that, nor are you to be respected for that as a professional or a human being, or even just a person speaking. You have no rights because you are in error, and you are wrong, and you are condemned, and you are nothing without this thing that I'm going to give to you, that I have actually understood can be harmful to a lot of people. But I'm going to force you to agree to allow me to force you to take this that is intended to change who you are on the most fundamental levels that is understood by people of my background, being the mind. And therefore you are condemned. And I have went to a lot of training, and my family has taken great pains, and I have taken great pains and given part of my experience, my opportunity to exist, that is time, to become familiar and versed with different ways of articulating thoughts, that I have looked at a different aggregate of people, and I'm applying them to who you are, not having experienced your experience, but I know you better than you because of this training that I've been afforded, and this position and privilege that I have to apply a label to you that may stigmatize you to others and yourself, and also segregate and marginalize you to others and yourself, and deprive you of different opportunities to enjoy your real opportunity to exist and further your own existence, and perhaps the existence of people who may look like and love you no less than your own progeny, by depriving you of the rights and privileges of standing first, and then property second, to redouble standing, to mitigate and facilitate different social, personal, and financial opportunities, and spell your fate. So I went this far through school, and I went through this much so that I can spell your fate for you, is what people are saying when they call someone insane. But I still think that it had been our choice to associate anything or choose not to associate anything. So you're actually more so insane for calling someone insane and thinking that you would be better than them, and that the better things we have may have actually in fact came from people who are considered insane. That is, people who are attempting the same thing or attempting to be the same way, past resistance, past failure, past setback, past patterns. To say that no, I feel something and I'm inspired by something, and I have a hint and a hunch that something is possible, and I've tried it this many times, but if I try it again, or maybe again and a little bit differently, I may yet come up with the upper hand, and actually the experience of human beings can be more healthy, humane, fun, and enjoyable for many days, weeks, months, decades, centuries beyond my experience, such as we had with like the inventors of the light bulb and the Wright brothers and so forth. In that nothing and no one is perfect, but these men had to take on the anti-honor, the dishonor of being mocked and ridiculed and written off. And those are the ones that landed. That maybe those are the ones that with the winning lottery ticket. But the author Nicholas Taleb has said that more so of your entrepreneurs, which an entrepreneur doesn't have to be a business undertaking. It can also be attempting original thought or attempting original expression and taking some form of risk to do something original, unique, and profound and valuable is an entrepreneur. And it takes a lot of it takes a elephant graveyard of entrepreneurs doing the right thing, doing the best things, to do their best, come up short, and receive zero credit, to make the environment and the spirit and the viability of the one or two handful that actually land and amount to something. So a shout out to the man Nicholas Taleb for honoring our different entrepreneurs, our different valorous entrepreneurs that make life safe, humane, and enjoyable. Whether that be in business or art or in intellect or in anything, in service, in anything, in maintenance, in anything, to make reality viable and safe. And a lot of them had to be written off, or if not written off, at least deprived of some of the joys that people that don't take the same risk but may get more honor in titles enjoy. Is what Nicholas Taleb commended. But I did think that, but yet all I meant to say is that it's our prerogative to associate, to choose what we choose to feel and associate and engage with and undertake. And sometimes we get written off as insane for that, not having affronted anyone or not having deprived anyone of any status or enjoyment of property or health. But yet we have all that stripped of us and deprived of us when we attempt daring, enlightened, original, and actually uplifting statements in good faith. Sometimes you can suffer for bringing good faith. Who is someone? They say that bad company displaces and corrupts good company, and I added displaces, but bad company corrupts good company. But I would say bad faith attempts to corrupt, and if it's not viable, will then displace good faith. So you bring your good faith statement, your good faith argument, your good faith idea to someone who is acting in bad faith, where maybe you could say that the premise of their whole life to having met you had been characterized by bad faith. Your choice of education, your choice of profession, your choice of application of profession, your choice of engaging naive, vulnerable, marginalized people in the first place, and further abusing them and stigmatizing them and condemning them. Maybe all that characterizes you and your personal heritage in this life, and what has amounted to your ability to choose and associate as being bad faith in what it amounts to for other people, and for other people to suffer who had been approaching things with their best understanding of good faith, coming from a compromised and underprivileged background in the first place. And sometimes you're actually more at-risk people do not appear at risk, and that's why they're actually so at risk. And then you come across someone who has a professional standing, title, and ability to spell the circumstance of other people, that is power, in the worst aspect and grisly aspect of that word. The author Orator Osho said that a lot of people say power this and power that, but if you look at the people who are considered and appreciated as having power, like you have like a military officer who walks as though they're sovereign and they're free, while they walk past the barracks or the attention of conscripted men who are basically having to fight with and without their own will, as maybe a deeper form of slavery. You walk past them, and what is your power amount to? Is it amounts to your ability to interfere with the well-being and ability and prerogative of other human beings or an environment. That's what's appreciated as power, according to Osho. And I would salute him for that statement. I'm damn near about to cry, bringing up Osho. Shout out. There's a rapper named Space Ghost Purple, and he said I swear in one of his raps a long time ago, he said, I swear I won't cry. So I'm saying right now, when I meet what's called God, him and herself, if I ever get to, I swear I won't cry, because I don't want to cry. When I see something that's that beautiful, I don't want to cry when I do that. Because they say that how would you know that you met God is because what's called God. I still think the word Chitgana is more encompassing, because it means massive consciousness, and all things that may have, may now, or may yet exist can be appreciated as consciousness, and so that affords space for the good, bad, and the ugly, and the also the unity and diversity within all that can be appreciated as Chitgana. I found that name that term in the footnotes of the works of Arthur Avalon. But I think if you were to meet something like that, it might make you appreciate crying, because it would be that ugly, that indifferent, and that elegant, as to and then to see the resolution of that and the meaning of that, it might make a person want to cry. But I don't want to cry when that happens, just like the rapper Space Ghost Purple. But I can appreciate that if you come appreciate some of the monsters that I came across in my life, and the monsters are more so well dressed and well respected. The more of a monster, the more well dressed, and also the more well respected, likely. There's worse things than monsters, but the worst things are more so benign and bland. And you may not appreciate how worse they are by their very blandness, nor recognize that you have been engaged, because you wouldn't be the wiser. So I'm not saying the monsters are necessarily always the most dangerous, but the monsters are the most distasteful and maybe the most hurtful. And if I would have had someone like Osho that could speak intelligently into who I am now and who I have been when I've been engaged with these different monsters, that would about make that would about make me cry if I could see someone like Osho speak intelligent to the type of bad acting and bad faith that I've ran across. It probably made me laugh more so. I probably cry with laugh. I'm damn near cry and die by laughter if someone like Osho could speak about this stuff, because he do a lot of what Chow Yun Fat did in Crouching Tiger, where he was using both his rhythm and his counterpointing rhythm, that is timing, that is spontaneity, that is improvisation, to engage with and enlighten the unconscious, though thought to be conscious, statements and emotions of a less seasoned and disciplined proponent or instructee, and improvise and point out the different puns and oversights and contradictions of their statements and behavior with good faith and in good humor, such that it would be spontaneous, brilliant, and enlightening, is like what Chow Yun Fat did in the lesson that he gave to the Ronin disciple in Crouching Tiger, and what I would imagine someone like Osho would do around some of these bogus actors that I've come across that are similar to monsters in fable and folklore. But my deeper message in this video is that we can associate things as we choose, and it's our prerogative, and it's our dignity, and it's I think it might be our place in on this earth, is to associate things. And then so what I wanted to say is that, so I was talking about how this medallion that I wear it is my understanding of solidarity among people from Africa, and that I think that I got on a sidetrack. But when I was a child in Africa, I was actually to be sometimes my parents have not been honest with me my whole life, nor about my history. So I grew up in the United States, and then my family hauled me across the the Atlantic Ocean to the southern region of Africa, and then they failed in whatever undertaking they had conceived to attempt there. And then my not well-to-do, but just my middle class and prudent and shrewd grandfather, who had a background in finance, he actually had enough money on hand in the late 80s to pay for at least myself and my mother to get back across the Atlantic, having been destitute and deprived in an ill-conceived attempt to relocate to Africa, taking a child through that, and then brought back to the United States, at least my mother and myself. And I don't know how my father got back. I don't know if my grandfather subsidized him also, but somehow we made it back to the United States. And then my family took me across the United States to the southern region, from the north to the south, to undertake education. And then in the middle of childhood, take me from the south to the north to undergo employment and education. And then in the middle point, the latter point of high school, took me to the mid-south to undergo opportunity to work in education, and then shortly brought me back to the northern United States at the very conclusion of education to again take on opportunities in education. And I don't know that any of that was in the best interest of a child, nor even if there had been much reasoning or reflection upon what that would do to the development of a child. And I'm not here to complain that, because I'm healthy and I have 2 feet that work, and I have a heart to love, and I have a mind to recognize right from wrong, and I also am in a clean and somewhat a decent living situation with access to humble transportation. So I have nothing to complain about. But all I meant to say is that I don't know that any of that is genuine, and I don't know that that anyone in my family ever actually communicated to me or helped me understand what I had been through. So all I meant to say is that I think I may have actually been destitute in Africa, and being sheltered temporarily by family at their mercy, and maybe at their frustration, if I'm being honest, because even a child, as beautiful as a child is, to a person that doesn't have a unique and outstanding heart and background of struggle to know what life is about and know what childhood is about, I don't know that they would even appreciate a child, even a relative, spending inordinate time at their home. So I think we may have actually been destitute in Africa as I was a child, but my parents were never forthright or maybe even coherent enough to communicate that that's what my experience is. But you can sometimes appreciate your experience when you grow a little bit, with the little clues that your family betrays when you can't really remember all that. I remember a lot of that experience, but I don't actually remember the circumstances and the decisions that were being made. But all I meant to say is, when I was in Africa, my cousin, what are called my cousins, there's a deeper kind of love that I felt from what would be called family there, that is way beyond what's appreciated as family in the West. I think that some of our terms in the West are confounding and a function of feudalism and in the inheriting of property. Like when we say brother, mother, father, stepsister, cousin, second cousin twice removed, these are almost like feudal titles and preconceived establishment of what a relationship means. But they're also limited and again linear. But in Africa, they have broader, deeper, and sometimes profound understanding of what relationship is, and it's a little bit more dynamic and sophisticated from my superficial experience of it, than what can be appreciated as the Western concepts of cognates or family. But I think that even Africa may have been assaulted with, and they may have been they may have had the overbearing influence of feudal concepts, where they would say things like brother and sister. But I think that gets us into a lot of trouble, because in Africa they understand relationships deeper. Like they understand that, one example, the limited understanding that I have is that they would appreciate your uncles from your mother's side, so like your maternal uncles, the way that your uncles would feel about and have a bearing on the maturing of your mother has a connection to you as her child. So your maternal uncles have a unique and profound relationship to a child. That's understood in some of the background in the region where my father comes from, and that's an example. And that's not better than the paternal uncles, but it's yet a different dynamic. And I know that I've always had a certain feeling around my mother's brothers. They're not perfect people, but they're not the worst people. And one of them is a lifelong self-styled learner and history buff, and a hard worker, and maybe a little bit of a womanizer and woman lover. I don't know all about that other part, but my mom has said different things about some some young attractive women that are in his life as he's like in his upper years. So I just think he's just an interesting guy. He's researched a lot, so he's interesting. He has interesting experience, propensities, tastes, and he's done unique research of his own initiative. So he's interesting. And then I have another uncle who is he's a freestyle philanthropist, delivery driver. I'm saying freestyle philanthropist, delivery driver, and then school bus driver, and gig worker, and basic all around figures some stuff out, how to pay a bill by the last day that's given to me type of guy. And then, but he is no less a poet, and he's actually won relationships in love with poetry, and he's actually blessed different gatherings in our life, but in other people's life with his poetry, and his poetry is more so humorous, and maybe it's not poetry if it's not humorous. That's just something I've thought of. But I have seen deep poetry from India that doesn't have humor, and it is yet poetry. But I think that maybe poetry needs something of a poetry needs it needs a contrast of light and dark, and it needs something tragic to be poetry. And I don't think there's anything more contrasting nor tragic than humor. Maybe the redemption in humor, the enlightening degree of humor, is actually the darkest, is the darkness within humor. And so you could say maybe humor is always dark, it is always tragic. Some people say they like dark humor, but maybe you can't like anything but dark humor. And even if you're sticking your foot in your own mouth or in another person's mouth, for them, for you, you're highlighting the subconscious state, the unconscious statements or assumptions or tastes of yourself and others, and you're highlighting that, and you're mocking that. But that's actually dark, because being unconscious while we think we're conscious is actually darker than it might seem. So that even dry, straight, good-natured humor, like a lot of my humor is more so dry humor, where my humor doesn't actually necessarily make people move their diaphragm without themselves, but they can appreciate that a joke just happened there. So it's almost kind of like a dud of a firework. Like, okay, that's not exactly the grand finale like on the 4th of July, but I can at least appreciate that a little like dud went off there, or like, you know, those little those white firework caps that you throw on the ground and they pop. That's about the farther that my humor goes. But you do enough of it, and it's kind of entertaining. Like dang, that's a lot of duds right there. Like, this guy's really trying. But so that's what I wanted to say with that. But what I meant to say is that in Africa, my uncles they're really cool guys, and sometimes the only times there's something called the joie de vivre. It's like the feeling of being alive. Like, some people call it like libido. I think libido is an ugly word. It comes from an ugly history of like that psychotherapy stuff, and I think that's actually a form of pandering, as is a lot of our medical the psychological the aspect of our current medicine. I think it's equally a form of pandering as it's in the past. It's just a modern, sophisticated form of pandering, and also pushing drug pushing pander, same thing. But and maybe it's not effective pandering if there's not drug pushing involved. If I want to make a cold statement like that, and you have all that with the mental health arena, and you also have embarrassment and estrangement from others for their subjects, for their what amount to like a form of prostituting. When we engage with these medical people, we're not entirely different than prostitutes, and we have our reputation and our self-esteem injured the same way a prostitute would by a panderer and or a drug pusher and or a person of leisure, as is the, I think, according to the author Mickey Royal, another term for pimp is a panderer, panderer, person of leisure is the same thing. And a lot of people with easy jobs that are lucrative and that cost other people esteem, finance, and opportunity are similar like that, and the latter subjects, victims, experience a similar detriment as like a prostitute would. But but my uncles are they're unique, and I have a unique relationship to them. And sometimes the times that I felt the joy de vivre, like what it means to be alive, I felt that with my uncles. It'd just be something simple, like we'd be taking a trip out of town, like going up to the next town over, like an hour or 2.5 away, and just getting up on the highway with them, but just their kind of conversation, because those two men would say some deep things, like they would have some enlightening conversation. I remember one time I took a ride home with them from a family gathering, last time that I saw my grandfather healthy and active. And we came home at night. My grandfather was sad to see me go because I left that a little bit early, because some of my other family members, like my very own next of kin and my cousins, they were acting like assholes and dipshits, so I wasn't trying to be around them too long. And I didn't feel comfortable around them. Like my damn it brother that I lived with for multiples of decades is at a family gathering acting like he doesn't know me, and we still live yet together. But so I left that meeting early, and then I drove at home through the night with them, and they were talking about like we've lost some people in our family at young ages, and while they were talking in the middle of the night in this dark car, my uncle the poet was like, what if dying means you simply cease to exist? That is the colder thing that I've heard, and a lot of my pretensions and taste for art are derived from that statement that he made. What if death means to cease to exist? You exist no more. Like that. That is the foundation for a lot of sublime creativity, inspiration, compassion, living. I would say maybe we are more so immortal by being immortal. You think about where you grew up at, and the type of feeling you have for that place, the love you have for that place, the memory you have for that place. If we actually existed forever like plastic, like a form of cancer, that might not be as endearing and enlightening and profound. It's the fact that we are yet mortal. Maybe the highest degree of maturity is to die. The highest, but before that, the highest degree of bearing and adult bearing in wisdom and decision making is to recognize that we can die and may likely die at any moment. That actual mortality is what makes immortality more profound. Think about what's called God. And I say that with reverence. If you had eternal life on your hands, that would mean eternal time on your hands. It would almost be redundant. Now, I have 5, 10, 50, I have my last $10 in my pocket, say, if I'm giving myself that much credit. That $10 is like that means more than if I had every dollar in existence. So time is money. So you have all time on your hands. You have every dollar in existence in your hands. What meaning does time have? What meaning does money have if you have simply all of it? How could you appreciate it if you had all of it? How could you appreciate it if it wasn't tentative and if it wasn't vulnerable? You have all of it. How could you appreciate it if it wasn't disciplined? We yet appreciate discipline. Like, if you had some of the most freedom you'll ever experience is like in a bedroom with someone, and yet if you have a whip in there or you have discipline in there, it's yet enjoyable. So even the greatest of freedom can be appreciated with a degree of discipline. So you have unlimited time and resources, but you yet somehow have discipline while having you have unlimited resource yet unlimited discipline at the same time. I'm not saying that's impossible, because all things are possible, but that's something of a strange dynamic. And so all I'm saying is that by being mortal, by the fact that there can be death, that makes life more so real and profound and immortal, in a sense where maybe our actual existence, maybe our actual physical, emotional, mental, spiritual being is fallible and is mortal, but the idea of us, the concept of us, the intention of us, the thoughts of us, these statements of us, as those impacted others and ourselves, but more so as they were intended and felt to where we were coming from, engaging other people and doing for other people and doing for ourselves. That is more so deep and profound, similar to how the subject of mathematics might be, according to the greats like Aristotle and Plato, broader than what we appreciate as reality, because It's simply a concept. So two plus what we appreciate as 2 plus 2 was possible to be said or thought as the universe was coming into existence now and beyond, at least as we can appreciate the universe in reality right now. Because the Arthur Avalon says that when the universe goes into different degrees and dimensions of cycles, that some things are not feasible that are in other cycles, sometimes even worship. The universe can get so real and so sublime that at that point, even worship is not it's not possible, and it's not righteous. At that, it was said in one of the works of Avalon that there's a point of development in the cycles of a universe where at that degree it's already that real and exact that to attempt to worship is yet an affront at that point. And I can't speak about to that, but I just meant to say that it's possible that there's a time where what's considered as 2 plus 2 is 4 is not possible to be thought or conceived. That is possible, but as we understand, a concept is yet enduring and is not limited by time and space, because it could have as easily existed in the past. It's similar with music. Like sometimes when I play music on the guitar, now I think that you can't play the same song the same way at any 2 points in what's appreciated as linear time if it's original and if it's live. I don't think you can play the same song the same way, but you can play more or less similar notes, and they would sound more or less similar now or a million years ago or a million years in the future, just simply based on the relationships of the oscillating frequencies in the rhythm. So you could say that the sound had been eternal in that sense, because it was as potential, it was as possible, as real, and as yet potential, possible, and possible to be real at a antecedent. So from the antecedent, precedent, no, from the precedent, present to antecedent points of the enunciating of a note being both potential, manifest, and then resolved to be again potential. It had existed fundamentally as the same as all that, as a pure concept or idea or potential. And there were, in reality, it was a viable potential within reality, but also in concept. But I think that but what I meant to say is that, so that might be the deepest part of what we are, is just the viability of us, the potential of us, and the thought and idea of us, and that's more so real by us being potentially mortal than had we been completely immortal with no potential to lose, suffer, or cease to exist. So that was conveyed with my uncle, but that's just to say that in Africa they have a unique appreciation for family and what family can and can't mean, but also sometimes family, even in Africa, even in the West, they can be anything but what's referred to as a brother, sister, mother, father, uncle, cousin, anything but that, and everything worse than that is what they actually are to us and have been to us for long, and would yet be to us if circumstance didn't mitigate and intervene. And so, but when we have these feudal titles, these preconceived notions that I think are a function of inheritance to mitigate opportunity upon nepotism and privilege, amounting to racism, imperialism, and no less gentrification, is all part of nepotism, but also feudalism and racism. And all people have the potential to be all that, of any ethnicity or background. That those concepts, those realities, those brutalities are more so profound, even like these concepts I'm talking about, than the actual living mortal agents that would represent those or be associated with those or ascribe to those. There's nothing inherently right or wrong or indifferent about a human being, and a human being is in their prerogative, so long as they shall exist, to associate with people, ideas, statements, and in art and even research as they like, as they are inspired, and to be fashioned by their own thoughts, intentions, and statements, perpetually as their grace to exist. So no one is limited to being great or horrible. All people are and can be all things as they are to be and choose to be. I just want to say that. But racism in itself, segregation in itself, gentrification in itself, imperialism in itself, entitlement in itself, disenfranchising in itself, feudalism in itself, colonialism in itself, slavery in itself, capitalism in itself, communism in itself, digitalism in itself, industrialism in itself, and on. These are brutal realities and potentials in reality, but no person is is fundamentally composed of, or bound by these realities as a definition, because I don't think reality is defined, nor is an agent and a member of reality defined. Um, but um, but so in Africa they have yet deep understandings of family and kinship, and it can go beyond. It can go from within to without to back to within actual blood relationships or genetic relationships. Where when I had that friend that friend of my father in this video, who was that African man from a different region of Africa, who was a security guard, and he conveyed confidence, but also challenge to me, a child of a man that he respected and was a friend to. That relationship, that bond with him, is as deep, if not deeper, than the bond with my maternal uncles. And maybe it felt a little bit realer than that even, and I think it may have benefited me equally, but it's different, but it's yet still family and kinship in the truest of terms, and we are yet one being, one reality. So to say that someone is or is not related to by blood is also another arbitrary statement. They might be more recently or appreciably related to by blood or genetics, but I think that we're as soon the same members of the same reality and of the same composition in terms of age, age and genetics as any other member of being. Such as, like, when you look at primates, like they look at chimpanzees and different. I think they said the closest is like chimpanzees, and that our genetic is like almost like 99.99999% exactly similar to any chimpanzee, and that's just an example of how it's not so much that we're that related to chimpanzees more than another thing. We're just scientifically appreciably related to chimpanzees in a unique way. We're related to each being in an equally unique yet equally different way. Each human being and each being, we're related to them in a unique yet profound way. That a unique way to each being, but sometimes it's appreciated in science and sometimes it's not. But we're as equally related to and not related to anything, because we are all things and one another. And I think that's some of the genetic overlap between the species, what's called species, is not that it's not only that we descended along similar lines of inheritance, which we likely have, but also that we had never stopped being anything different than one another, whether or not we're of a recent appreciable family lineage or line of descent or not, because it's not so much the lines of descent in the family trees. It's the earth. It's the reality. That's what we're the same as. That's what we are. But all I'm going to say is that family can be much less than family, and family can be much more than family, and that's within and beyond a genetic connection that as is appreciated, and it's much more broader and dynamic than our linear understanding of brother, sister, and whatnot. But in Africa, but what I want to say is that when in Africa, I shared things with my cousins there. I had deep relationships with my cousins and my older cousins that were profound, and they were more loving and also more challenging than my family in the West. And then we would break apart toys. Like there's one part in my experience where there had been like a toy plastic gun, and it got broke into many pieces, and we were sharing it as though it was as cool as a proper gun. And so that's an example of how in Africa we're yet of one heritage. We're of yet one destiny, to use a beautiful word. But we also exist and are a part of one another, and what's ours belongs to one another in a little bit different way than is appreciated in Western terms of property. And there may be good and bad that comes with that, because there's good and bad with all things. But it's just some of the reciprocity that's between people from Africa, in terms of like like a toy, but then also some of our insight, like what I'm doing with this video, and what a lot of people do on YouTube, or what people did in testimony in churches in times in past or in present, and then also a lot like within music. And that's what I did videos that I understand the real hip hop is actually this deeper reciprocity between Africans and human beings, and Africans and human beings, which are nonetheless different. We have a reciprocity going back, and that the Judge Joe Brown said that some of how we navigated different environments and terrains historically in nature and that present was by getting together and bantering and sharing insight about the game trails, which are actually the life and death information to survive. And it's part of that reciprocity of understanding, expression, music, art, and also physical property and advantages and substance. is part of being African. But I want to say that all of us come from Africa, European, Asian, Middle Eastern, Australian, American. I think it has been appreciated that all of us